and to treat it as both residential in the downtown area. So I don't want to lose sight of the point that Councilor Williams made, but this is not something that is not affecting a neighborhood where we've encouraged people to move and live. And I think we have to address those issues also.
Councilor Williams.
Follow up. I don't want to make this a dog and pony show. When you talk about community development block grant money, which we're using downtown, you want to get real technical, that's based upon how poor your city is. And the federal government likes the investment to go back to the poor communities where that money should go. Now, I know downtown is a neighborhood, part of a neighborhood. I can take you, Old Hill district that I represent is the poorest neighborhood in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I'm not about to give up my district to make downtown a lot better. I understand it's got to be a team effort. We got to all come together. All I'm saying is every time Mr. TJ comes, it's a project that's not in the urban community. And I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to be tenacious with that. We have to find a way that we can't make it downtown-centric, as I say. It can't be downtown-centric. I've supported downtown from Springfield Central all the way up. I understand, I get it. But at the expense of the neighborhoods are sick and tired of being played as second fiddle. That's all I'm saying. You have to figure a way the balance. It's a balancing act. Yeah, we want downtown to prosper, but meanwhile, we don't want Rome to burn while downtown is prospering. That's all I'm saying. I understand that. I get it. I'm not trying to make any trouble, but I do know. I get the complaints. Maybe you gentlemen don't. People want to see something in their neighborhoods, their particular neighborhoods. It's great for downtown, but that doesn't do me any good talking to people in the community. I mean, they'll say, hey, bud, that's great. What does that mean? That's all I'm saying. TJ, you need to come in here and get some stuff teed up and get some stuff going in the neighborhood so people feel like they're part of the city and it's not a tale of two cities where downtown is doing great and the rest of the neighborhoods are struggling. And that's what I feel now. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Well, Councilor, we do have an $850 million capital improvement plan that exists to fund, that includes neighborhoods. But I mean, just so you know, we can't fund everything. As you're aware, we have to do the debt affordability to make sure everything's, whether or not is within our debt capacity. But a project's completed in FY17. There's a central library assessment and facade stabilization. I know that's more the downtown, but that's something that needs to happen because the building needs it. There's all the different vehicles that we needed to buy for the DPW for trash removal. There's Ruth Elizabeth Park design. There's Bright Nights Technical Training facility. There's the Union Station. Those are projects that are done. There's Balliet Park renovations. There's Brightwood feasibility study. There's all these things. So there's a lot of stuff in there. I can break it out by neighborhood if that's what you want and report back to the city council. But you know, we're doing the best we can to balance limited revenues to do all we can that's going to attract people downtown for this area, but also brighten up our neighborhoods. So happy to present to you when you have time or want to call a committee meeting on it.
Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chris Russell from the BID is here tonight. He's actually in support of 3 items tonight: Stern Square, the mobile truck unit, and I forget the other one, but you might want to ask him about the BID's involvement in this.
Thank you, Chris Russell, Executive Director of the Business Improvement District. I guess the first thing I'd like to point out is the BID has been taking a very active role in the redevelopment of the TDI district, which includes many partners, some of which Mass Development is invested, Mass Mutual, private investors. I would also point out that the use of the park does serve many downtown residents. There's well over 1,500 residents within a one block radius of this park that it would support and give them the ability to get outside and enjoy an urban park. Councilor Allen, I just wanted to mention that the Business Improvement District is actually, we do have an MOU with the city. We receive $70,000 annually. We actually have committed over $140,000 of this budget year to the redevelopment of the TDI district. That includes a master lease. That includes incentives for restaurants to move into the district. We've also done some pre-planning for developers to come into the district. So I think this park serves many, many needs. One, it's the centerpiece around the redevelopment of the TDI district. Two, it serves well over 1,500 residents that are within a one-block radius of this park. And lastly, I think it would be positive for the city to take part in this redevelopment and to do their part. We've had Mass Development invest today over $1.5 million of 8 to 12 Stern Square, the former Skyplex building. We have a private investor that's purchased on Worthington Street that's investing over $600,000 into a building that's sat idle for the last 10 years. And the redevelopment of this park, lastly, will be a gateway to the city that really should shine with the opening of Union Station. Thank you.
Would the clerk please recognize the counselor in seat number 3?
Councilor Rook.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I agree with what everybody's saying. It has to be a balance, and certainly Bud Williams, you've been a champion of that your entire career. But I would like to recognize Chris Russell, the bid, separately, because Chris is always downtown at the downtown events, does a great job. I've been at concerts that he's been at to try and enjoy it, and people are on him, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? But he speaks about Union Station, and it's going to be open very shortly. It'd be a terrific gateway for them to come in. And you see it in New York, you see it in New Jersey, you can see it in Northampton, you can see it in East Hampton, to have outside dining and outside recreation and music. And the development of the city is a lot more than bricks and mortar. It's arts and entertainment. And when you go down to the concerts at night, whether it's White Lion Wednesday or Thunderbird Thursday or the concert series that we used to have, or the Jazz Fest, and you have 5,000 people sitting out on the lawn here, after they're done relaxing, they go out and they go to the different restaurants or they go to the different spots to have a drink. And this is going to tie into that entire master plan. And this has been talked about for at least 6 years. And it finally is starting to get some traction with a lot of the development down there between Mass Development and the Mentors Program. I think collectively between those, it's about $10 or $11 million, I think. I haven't read the report that's on the desk. But this is a good thing. It's $1.5 million that's going to bring people downtown. And I'm happy we're debating it. But it's a good thing all around, and we should be voting for it, and I'll be voting in favor of it. And Chris, just want to thank you again for all that you do.
Any other questions or comments from the council? All right, seeing none, this is a financial order subject to Rule 19. All those in favor of suspending Rule 19, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the order, Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook. Yes. Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Back to our regular agenda. We are still on reports of committee. Are there any other reports of committee? All right, seeing none. Items 2 through 14, Mr. Clerk.
Items 2 through 14 are petitions from the BPW. 2 through 12 are petitions from Light Tower for the installation of fiber optic conduit at various locations throughout the city. Item number 13 is a petition from Verizon for the installation of a utility pole on Allen Street. And item number 14 is a petition from Columbia Gas for the installation of underground gas utilities on Washington Boulevard.
Good evening. Name and address for the record, please. Councilor Shea.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask that we hold off on item number 14. I've received correspondence from residents on that street, especially the house where they're going to put this right in front of, and I'd like to have a meeting with the neighbors and the gas company before we go forward on that.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, we don't need a motion for that. We can take items 2 through 13, or motion for... All right, so motion to committee, correct?
Yes.
Motion to committee was
Second.
made, seconded by Councilor
Second.
Edwards. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Good evening.
Good evening, President Ramos. As Attorney Wilson stated, we have 11 petitions through Light Tower. Light Tower is working with the City School Department and Building Facilities Unit to bring fiber optic to locations throughout the city, and their 11 petitions is basically installing conduit in various locations around the city to get that taken care of. Item number 13 is basically Verizon installing a new pole at the corner of Alton Street and Roosevelt Avenue over by Putnam High School.
Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the petition say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 15 and 16, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 15 is the FY17 Fire Safe Grant for the amount of $1,800. Item number 16 is the Fire Department donation in the amount of $215.
All those in favor of accepting the grant say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 17, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 17 is the Mass Call 2 Grant in the amount of $361,261.
Good evening, councilors and Mr. President. This grant is a grant for opioid use in the city of Springfield prevention and intervention. Springfield is the lead agency for Chicopee and East Longmeadow and Holyoke as well, and so we will be working diligently in those three cities to make sure we're doing good education and prevention around this devastating public health trend.
Councilor Ash.
Does this grant have any beds attached to it in terms of those fundings, or just strictly educational?
Thank you, Councilor Ash. I'm glad that you asked that question. It is not for beds, and as you know, I've talked to you and others about the fact that in the Western region, we really are stretched or do not have enough beds to meet the challenge of substance and opioid overuse and abuse, heroin, as well as crack and alcohol. So this city and this region really does need to advocate for additional beds for our population in the Western region. Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you, Helen. Excuse me, Mr. President. I think it goes without saying that, all of us, I think, are educated to the fact that there aren't sufficient amounts of beds. Unfortunately, it's woefully low, and many families that are going through this with family members or loved ones or whomever else are experiencing that. And to the extent that we can exert pressure on the state or federal entities to come through with some funding for that, I think it should be one of our top priorities in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Seeing none. All those in favor of receiving the grant say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number
Thank you.
18, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 18 is an increase in funding for the Governor's Highway Traffic Enforcement Grant in the amount of $112,000.
Good evening, councilors. We're here before you to ask you to formally accept an additional $28,000 in Governor Highway Safety monies that we're going to use to fund an ongoing distracted driving mobilization. It's $28,000 in additional to the $84,000 previous. That will bring our total award to $112,000.
Any questions from the council?
We automatically.
Seeing none. All those in favor of receiving the grant say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 19, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 19 is an order to ratify the collective bargaining agreement with the SFCA union.
Who's that?
Good evening, councilors. Bill Mahoney, Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations. I bring you a series of contracts tonight between the city and the Springfield Fire Chiefs Association. This actually is a set of 4 contracts, and I'll walk you through it. We began negotiations on January 25th of 2013, and you may recall back in September I came in to see the council with a tentative agreement that had been ratified by the union. At that time, the council voted that contract down, with residency being one of the primary issues, or one of the primary reasons for voting it down. We then had multiple meetings with the union. We've had mediation sessions, and we came up with another tentative agreement. And I just want to walk you through that and let you know what the changes were. So as I said, this is a set of 4 contracts covering a period of 8 years from July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2020. The last time I was in front of you, it was a 4-year deal, a 1 year and a 3-year contract together for 4 years. We're now covering 8 years. The wages are 0 in the first year, followed by 2s in each successive year for 7 years. There's also a 1.5% increase on 7/1/14, and this follows the pattern that was established for the other public safety contracts for that 4-year period between 2012 and 2016. And that covers the Springfield Police Supervisors Association, the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, and the IFF. They all had that same 0.222 with a 1.5 or something. So we followed that with this group as well. That 1.5 is the quid pro quo on that was these collateral duties, which are very important to the administration of the fire department. So it's extra work, extra duties that the fire chiefs did not have to perform before that we added into the contract. We also added in 1.5% for residency, again, understanding that was an issue that the council wanted me to go back on. And we put that on effective 7/8/17. And I'll talk about residency for a minute. We grandfathered the existing fire department employees on residency. And if it's okay with the council, I have excerpts from the other contracts that have been approved by the council. Just, if that's okay, Mr. President, to pass these out? Is that all right?
The clerk will receive them.
So as the council is aware, I've been in front of you a number of times now bringing in contracts that have some type of residency provision. And what we've done time and again is we've said, just grandfather the existing employees, people coming in hired after that date, we're going to go and we'll make the residency ordinance be applicable to them. And as you can see from what's being handed around, that's what we've done time and again. Well, that's what we're doing here as well. What we're doing is we're grandfathering the existing employees, and I mean the employees in the fire department, not just in this bargaining unit, because they all came in through this chain of command of firefighter to lieutenant to captain to district chief. And they're all promoted through the same scheme. So what we're saying is we're going to grandfather all of them, not change the rules of the road for anybody, except for new hires that we don't have as employees yet. They will then follow the same rules of the road, at least as far as the district chiefs go. So if they want to get promoted to the district chiefs, they're going to know before they even become an employee of ours that they need to live in the city, or at least they are subject to the residency ordinance. I pointed out at the Finance Subcommittee meeting, we have not finalized the contract with the IFF at this point. Their contract expired in 2016. That's the other firefighter group. We are having talks with them. We are talking about residency and other matters as well. That deal is not done yet. That deal may end up in arbitration. We may be able to get it done at the table. There's still a question mark hanging over that. We have some other items in the contract that we followed again from what we did with the last set of the public safety contracts. We have a drug testing clause in there. We eliminated a position that we want to take out, and that was the supervisor of fire alarm. We added on, importantly, there was no language in this contract for the Fair Labor Standards Act under 207K exemption. It really needed to be in there. We've been following it all along, but we never codified that in the contract. We put that in this one here. I've talked about the collateral duties. We did some things for finance with direct deposit, electronic payroll advices, and biweekly pay, those sorts of things. And that's not in any of our city contracts at this point. So all in all, I know that residency is a hot topic for the council. We made some progress with this. We'd ask that you consider ratifying it tonight. It is a good package for the city, and it leaves us in a good position as we begin negotiations or continue negotiations with the other 3 public safety groups.
Councilor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. President. This particular case has been a tough one for me. I just want to give you guys the backdrop of what went into my decision. Unlike what Mr. Mahoney has said, this particular case is unique than the other collective bargaining agreements. And it's unique because we have 6 district chiefs who are currently in violation of a law. And I'm going to repeat that. We have 6 district chiefs who are currently in violation of the law. And so what we're being asked to do is to grandfather these 6 district chiefs so that essentially they don't have to follow a law that we created. What good is this body if we create laws that don't have to be followed at any given time? And I was leaning towards, and to Mr. Mahoney's credit, was somewhat excited about seeing residency in the contract. But once I realized that it didn't apply retroactively to the 6 district chiefs, I was disturbed. The only reason why we sent this contract back to you was so that you could come up with something that would rectify the fact that these district chiefs are in violation and continue to be in violation. But what ultimately occurred was that we rewarded them. And we rewarded them with a 1.5% raise, which in essence is a smack in the face to taxpayers and to the citizens of this city. At the very least, I was hopeful that in this particular contract, you would at least have forced these 6 members, or at least came to some sort of agreement that they would move into the city of Springfield. But I didn't see that either. And it's unfortunate that the people that are going to suffer are the people that are following and have been following the rules. And I have a fundamental problem with that. And I know we're going to hear today the counter argument that, when your house is burning down, you don't ask where the individuals are from, Ludlow, Wilbraham, Munson. But the reality is that doesn't supersede the fact that we have individuals who are in violation of the law and are in turn being rewarded for that because the city doesn't have the courage to enforce the law. And so essentially, these district chiefs who are causing the rest of the people in this unit to suffer are able to have their cake and eat it too. And then my last point, which I've been hearing from a lot of residents, is that the city needs to make up its mind in terms of its stance on residency. On the one hand, we'll quickly and swiftly fire our fire commissioner for not enforcing the residency requirement. And then on the other hand, we allow our director of human resources to go and negotiate a contract from a position of weakness. I don't get it. And the city deserves better. If the district chiefs are in violation of the law, then the city needs to enforce the law. Right. And at the very least, they need not send you to go and negotiate a contract with these individuals that starts with a 1.5% increase for residency, which they are currently in violation of. And so my hope is that the members of the council and my colleagues will vote against this contract and vote against it just because it's wrong. And it's the wrong message to send to citizens. We don't want that precedent or to set that precedent because it's just a slippery slope. And in 2017, I think the contract says that these particular new hires are supposed to follow the same residency ordinance that is on the books now. If the city isn't going to enforce it or hasn't enforced it now, there's nothing that leads me to believe that they'll enforce it in the future. And so I hope my colleagues will consider my statements and support me on this particular issue. Thank you.
Councilor Gomez.
I had a question. Thank you, Mr. President. So the firefighters that are grandfathered in, when these new hires were to come on, they would still be under that old contract that they're grandfathered in, so they don't have to live within the city limits?
Right.
And then versus these these new hires, they are mandated to live in the city limits.
New hires after 7/1/17 that were, that made it to district chief would be under the ordinance, yes.
All right, so some of these individuals that are waiting to become district chief now, some of these individuals that live in the city, this would kind of hurt them in a way.
They wouldn't be required to live in the city.
They wouldn't be required to live in the city.
They'd be grandfathered. They'd be grandfathered.
I think that sends the wrong message that these guys can obey the law and these guys can't. I don't know. That was just a question. It was confusing. Thank you.
Councilor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, there's a historical precedent to this, to residency. As we discussed in the committee meeting, in which I have seen and experienced over the years, and many of my colleagues on the council have seen it, there has never been a fair, even enforcement of the residency ordinance. So to say that the district chiefs are not doing their jobs, I think that's patently unfair, because they were operating, and I believe you said going back to, was it 1995? In the meeting, you said you were talking about the residency.
It's going back further than that even, yes.
Yeah. They were operating the way the city was operating for all these years. And as far as the taxpayers go, they've been doing their jobs as district chiefs. They've been doing what they were supposed to do. And this issue of residency has been debated, I think, since, going way back to I think it came up early, as far as like in 1989 maybe, and it's never been fairly enforced, so that people don't know which way to go on this, and they're going the way that the city has enforced it. So there's two sides of the coins on this. I would agree with you, Councilor Hurst, if there hasn't been this history of non-compliance with the residency issue about the district chiefs. But I think it's unfair to penalize them. They've done their jobs. There's never been anybody that's been called out for it in that history. So what is people supposed to think? It's been unfairly enforced for years. And people are always talking about favoritism. Whether or not that happens, I can't speak to that. But I think what we have before us tonight is a good faith effort to take care of our district chiefs who have done what they're supposed to do in their positions, move on, and have the residency that the council has been looking for. I think it's a really good faith issue, and I think that it will give Mr. Mahoney an opportunity to bring this up in other contracts and will let us move forward. And I hope that people support it.
Councilor Rook.
He didn't give me credit for my quote, but I'll bring that up a little. I have a new one tonight. But what we're here tonight to discuss is whether or not we're going to approve a contract. And I know a lot of times when the different contracts come up, residency gets brought up again or dragged into it. That, I think, is a decision for the mayor's office or the courts. And we're saying, well, these 6 individuals. So in a different light, what I'd like to say is, who remembers where they were in June of 2011? We were in the middle of a tornado, right? Right. All right. Where were you in November of 2012? That was the gas explosion. While we were all in bed, the fire chief and his team, his 5 guys, his deputies, his lieutenants, his A-team, whatever you want, took control and created an emergency plan for the city of Springfield. So, as I say, this is about the position, not the individuals. I never had a chance to thank those gentlemen or the chief for that, so I'd like to do that tonight. And I think you've done a great job, and you continue to do a good job, and you continue to protect the city. But it's human nature to forget. What I'll also remind everybody is during that tornado, many of us went to the control center to take pictures, stand on the news. These guys are out digging people out of their homes, dragging them into an ambulance and down to the emergency shelter. If you don't want to vote for them, keep that in mind when you say no. But I'm going to vote yes and say thank you for the work that you did and for protecting this city.
Councilor Edwards.
I'm going to stand and also give thanks to the officers. On the day of the tornado, I was not at the center trying to get my picture taken. I was, in fact, trying to get the tree off the front of my house. And as soon as I got the tree off the front of my house, I was fortunate enough to have several cases of water. So I went walking up Pine Street towards Central Street and started handing out bottles of water, telling people it's going to be okay. But I do thank those officers. The point that I'd like to make is that I'm not going to criticize any of my colleagues for whatever decision they make, whether they're for this contract or against this contract. But let us recognize that the lack of enforcement meant that there are some men and women in this city that are firefighters that were out on that same day assisting us in a tragic event who have never had the opportunity to become in these positions because of the lack of enforcement. At some point, whenever you enact some type of new law or ordinance or change in the way things used to be, the people who benefited from the way things used to be are the first ones to complain about the fact that now they feel the injustice of those people who did not get the opportunity all these years because people refused to move into the city. There are residents who are firefighters, who are qualified to fill these positions, who are sitting in this audience. They are sitting at home watching this event, waiting to see if we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We need to vote against this for the very simple reason that the officers and the rank and file members who are qualified to be in these positions, who are residents, are waiting for their opportunity. Thank you. And I do appreciate all that they've done.
Are there any other councilors? Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will say that I became a part of the resident conversation, I would say later in the game, but throughout my experience canvassing and knocking on doors in my particular neighborhood, which encompasses 16 acres, Pine Point, and Upper Hill, residency was certainly a hot topic. And I will say that 8 out of the 10 folks that brought that issue up were in favor of the residency clause that gave people the opportunity that already live in Springfield to advance and kind of enter into these positions. Now, what I am concerned with is the precedent that this body is setting. Why I am concerned is because we enforced the residency requirement and have criticized those who have not from the top down. So if now we buckle down and say, well, we can grandfather people into an ordinance or, a contract, that is exempting people from following that same standard that we set. I don't see how that makes sense at all. I think it's counterintuitive. I think it's counterproductive. And I think, on top of it, to those that are looking from their homes right now on public access TV or those right here, it says that this body is not consistent in its rights and in how it feels about this issue. And I think that's dangerous, especially with something that we have an opportunity to kind of set the standard for. And I think the conversation should be about rejecting this contract just because we need to be consistent in how we talk about this issue, as well as how, moving forward and further contracts coming forward, I'm quite sure this won't be the last, and how that's discussed as well. So I also stand in solidarity with those councilors that say they won't be voting in favor of this contract.
Are there any other councilors? Councilor Bud Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise. This is a very important issue for the city of Springfield. And certainly, I just want to, this is not about the fire department, whether they do a great job or not. We all know we have the best fire department in the whole country. We know that. That's not even an issue. We were all at the tornado, Councilor Allen and myself in East Forest Park and parts of Ward 3. We were out there. We were all out. It's not about that. This is about 5 deputies, not the fire department. And oh, by the way, I was with the president of the Fires Union, the big guy, last week. Okay, we love law enforcement. We all know that. This is about a principle. And oh, by the way, Councilor Rook, you did say something about the law, let the courts decide. Well, this matter, and I think all of you should have got a correspondence from Attorney Moriarty, who's representing the 10 plaintiffs who sued the city. If we pass this tonight, this will circumvent the law. The lawsuit is still open. 10 citizens sued the city, saying your residency clause was not valid. It's still in court before Judge Sweeney, I believe. This is an open case. So I agree with you, Councilor Rook. Let's vote this down. Let's get direction from the court as to what they say ultimately. It's in court. Oh, it's in court. Oh, it's an open case. And then Bill Mahoney knows that. He'll probably have to go back and be a witness. How we can reward, and all those 5 deputies are good guys, they're decent individuals. It's not about that. It's about the principle of residency. Bill, how do you come with a document like this saying months ago you couldn't enforce residency? You can't enforce it, they wouldn't buy it. And all of a sudden, residency and grandfather people in. Doesn't seem like the system is fair. And I received calls like Councilor Edwards has and some other colleagues. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. You know, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, smells like a duck. It's a duck. It's a duck. This is not, and you hate to bring Councilor Rook personalities in the middle of this because I don't like to talk about people. They're all good, great people. It's not even about the individuals. It's about the system. This is a broken system. Let the courts, Councilor Rook, you said, let the courts determine, finish it out. Councilman already gave you a nice narrative of what's going on, point by point, and bring it back after the courts decide. And oh, by the way, to reward individuals doesn't fair. I mean, I think the citizens would be outraged. People want residency in Springfield, and they want it enforced. And they want you to enforce. Put you in a tough situation. You've done a magnificent job trying to battle. You've done a great job. You're just in the middle. You're caught in the middle, that kind of thing. You're just in the middle. You're doing one side and the other. You're doing your job. You've done your due diligence. Did the best you could do. I appreciate that. I really do. But I can't vote for this. I agree with Councilor Edwards. There's too many people who have lagged behind residency. This becomes a form of holding people back who live in this city, who play by the rules, who buy homes in this city, who spend money in this city, and we can't reward them. These guys might be there another 10, 15 years. People behind them will never have an opportunity. It's a form of discrimination. It is a form of discrimination when you have people in position that hold these positions and people behind them have no opportunity because they're not leaving. They're pretty young guys. So I appreciate your due diligence, your effort on this, but I'm going to have to vote against this tonight, Mr. Mahoney.
Councilor Shea.
Yeah, I just want to take another angle on this, and that is not the piece on the residency, but we've got a group of people in this department that have worked for the city, and they've been without raises since around 2012. And it seems, I understand the importance of the residency piece, but is there any way, Mr. Mahoney or anyone here, that we can solve the puzzle of at least granting raises to these individuals and take this other piece and deal with that separately so that we don't have people going, there's no one in this room works anywhere other than this group of people, probably haven't a raise since 2012. And I'm just amazed that we can't find some way. I understand it's a contract, and I understand you really can't break these into pieces, but is there any mechanism, and we probably don't have it here tonight, in which we could at least grant salary increases to these families while we get to the bottom and straighten this residency thing out? Because it seems unfair. There's two unfair pieces going on here. There's the unfair piece of the residency and the unfair piece of that problem, denying people just compensation for a job, a very dangerous job that they're doing, while we go around in legal circles to solve something else. And that's my point. I don't think we're going to get an answer here tonight, but that's what I think we need to look at.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes, I think there's another piece to this puzzle that we haven't discussed tonight, but if you could clarify for me, doesn't the state have exemptions for residency, and who does that affect?
Yeah, under Mass General Law, Chapter 31, Section 58, there's a 10-mile exemption for civil service employees where, if they can live within 10 miles of the perimeter of the city, and it was recently amended by the legislature to allow the parties to negotiate a greater distance beyond the 10 miles.
Well, isn't there language regarding police, teachers, and fire?
Teachers specifically have their own statute where they're not required to live in a city or town where they are.
And police and fire would be through.
Police and fire have that 3158, or there's another statute under Chapter 41, which is a 15-mile perimeter.
Okay. So where does civil service play any role in who gets these positions?
Well, it's a civil service department, so everything is by test. So you'd have to score, you'd have to pass the examination. Then once you pass the examination, typically for filling one slot, we'd look at the top 3 candidates, and we'd make a pick from the top 3.
And where does residency fit in with civil service?
I don't think civil service enforces residency. I think that's something that if we enforced it, then there would be an appeal process to civil service about that.
Okay. So you said in the meeting that if this went forward, this would be a good step and help you in future negotiations. Could you expand on that?
Well, I'm at the table now with the other 3 public safety units, the police supervisors, the IFF, and the IBPO. So right now, that issue is really going to be discussed with all the groups, and it would be great to have one contract done that I can point back to and say, look, this is what we did, we settled it, these are the terms we settled it on. We did pay something, and this is all we paid for it. We didn't pay 5%, we didn't pay 3%, we paid 1.5 on it. And here's the formula that we want to follow, and this is what we'd like you guys to settle for.
Okay. I think Councilor Shea made a fabulous recommendation. I'm hoping we could probably do something on that, because we're all talking about being fair, and it is unfair not to honor raises when people have done the work. I think that sets a terrible precedent.
Any other councilors? Seeing none, I would like to have an opportunity to speak on this matter, and so I will step down and allow Vice President Councilor Hurst to preside over the rest of this item.
Councilor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I received the agenda for tonight's meeting, and I opened up the agenda, I saw that there was a collective bargaining agreement proposal for this firefighters union, and I skimmed through it, just like you said, Councilor Hurst. You're excited to see the residency clause in there, and I responded the same way. My initial response was, we finally got residency into this contract. However, as I looked a little bit further, I noticed that there wasn't anything in there that addressed those who are currently in violation of the residency clause, and I was disappointed to see that. I thought that we made it very clear when we voted this contract down last fall that we expected to see residency language in the next proposal. Not only that, but that we expected a resolution on those who were currently in violation of the law. And it's clear that that message wasn't received. And so, and not only that, but I'm disappointed to see that you took what we said in that meeting when we voted the contract down and brought it back to the negotiating table and gave something in return for what we were asking for, when we didn't have to give anything for that. I've never heard of a collective bargaining agreement bargaining over a law. We don't bargain over following a law. It's a law. It's in place. You follow a law. I don't have to pay you to follow a law. That's not the way it works. Now, I've been at the negotiating table before as a member of a union, and my union never had the fortitude to say, we'll follow a law if you pay us. Never heard that. It's not the way negotiations work. That's not the way collective bargaining works. It's a law, it's in place, you follow it. And let's think about what they're asking for here. This is the equivalent. There are six district chiefs who are not living in the city who would essentially be pardoned if we were to approve this contract. And so let's think about that scenario for a second. That would be the equivalent of one of us breaking a law and going to court and saying, Your Honor, I broke the law. I was caught breaking the law. I will continue to break the law. However, I promise you that the next person in my position will follow the law. Only if you pay me. That argument would not fare very well in court. And it's not going over very well with me. There's a law in place, and that law should be followed. And this is the type of vote that really defines what kind of council we want to be, right? Are we going to be a council who stands sternly behind the laws that we pass, the laws that we enact? Or are we going to be a council who says these laws only apply to certain people? They don't apply to the people that we like. They don't apply to these people because they're first responders. These laws apply to everyone. And I think that we have to be a council that stands behind the laws that we enact. They're in place for a reason, and no one is exempt from these laws. So, and these are not entry-level positions that we're talking about, Mr. President. I like numbers, so I put some numbers together. I pulled up the salaries of the people that we're talking about. There are 10, right? 10 people who are 10 firefighters who are under this contract. And the total salaries, the total annual salaries for these 10 folks is $1,028,763.32. When you take into account the actual numbers, including overtime, et cetera, the actual gross that we're paying for these 10 positions is $1,177,892.36. Do you want to know how much of this money goes to other cities and towns? For the 6 that don't live in the city? $731,759.76. That's 62% of what we're paying for district fire chiefs. 62% of that, $1.1 million, is going outside of the city of Springfield, to Ludlow, to Longmeadow, to East Longmeadow, wherever. But it's not going into the city of Springfield. And so I made it very clear when I voted against this contract the last time that I expected to see residency language in the next one, not just for future hires, but for those. We have to resolve what is happening and what we're going to do about those who are currently in violation of the law. And until we're ready to discuss what the consequences are going to be for those who are breaking the law, I'm not ready to discuss supporting the contract. I have no interest in discussing that. And so I'm a no vote, Mr. President, because I believe that we have to be a body, a legislative body. We are the legislators of the city. We are the legislative body. We are the lawmakers in this city. And I believe that we have to stand behind the laws that we enact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Are there any other councilors who wish to speak to this issue? Say again, are there any other councilors who wish to speak to this issue? Seeing none, this is a financial order and is subject to Rule 19. All those in favor of suspending Rule 19, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk, may you please call the roll.
On ratifying the contract, Councilor Edwards. No. Councilor Allen.
No.
No. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
No.
No. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
No.
No. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs absent. Councilor Shea.
No.
No. Councilor Fenton.
No.
No. Councilor Ramos.
No.
No. Councilor Bud Williams. No. Councilor Hurst.
No. There are insufficient votes to pass this financial order. The collective bargaining agreement is not ratified.
I am, Commissioner.
Item number 20, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 20 is an order authorizing the expenditure of FY18 Chapter 90 funds in the amount of $3,657,832.
Good evening, councilors. Last week, the city of Springfield received a letter from Mass DOT authorizing $200 million statewide for Chapter 90 funds. Based upon the formula, the city of Springfield is receiving $3.657 million. The state has appropriated $200 million for the last 6 years. 1 year in between, there was a bump of $100 million that came halfway through the year. Of the $3.6 million, we intend on spending 2.7 of it on a city roadway resurfacing program, $432,000 on design projects. We're currently working on the X, Bay and Berkshire, St. James and Carew, and Cottage and Berkshire as well. $200,000 for roadway maintenance, which is essentially our crack sealing program. $100,000 for traffic signal improvements, which is basically equipment of the 230 or so traffic signals the city owns. And we pay for 4 employees within DPW through the Chapter 90 program that work on the state projects. This year, our plan is to put a bid out that includes the 2.7. We are also including about $130,000 from facilities for some parking lot work. And we are hopeful that we would be getting $300,000 through the CDBG program. However, that money is not in place at this point. We probably won't find out if we have those funds until sometime later in May. In the packet that you are given, our program this year, we have 17 streets total that we're doing. We're doing 4 arterial streets, 9 residential streets, and then we are doing 4 streets that have been put on hold for the last 3 or 4 years in the downtown area in order to coordinate them with work that's being done as part of the MGM program. Taylor Street, Lyman, Kaner, and West. West Street and Avocado, the intersection is getting redone as part of the casino. Taylor and Lyman, parking and access improvements are being done along with Kaner, so we're coordinating that work that is on there also. We need the approval of this order at this time in order to have our program together. We have 2,000 streets in the city of Springfield, and I'm doing 17 of them, so if you do the math real quick, we are way below 1% every year of trying to get these streets done. There are a number of streets in the city that require work. The way that we pick streets is we, as a DPW, inspect the city streets. We have a program that rates them, and we basically start at the bottom of the list, coordinate with water and sewer, Columbia Gas, and other utilities to stay away from certain streets that they're working on. As an example, Mill Street that's being done right now with all the water and sewer work, Eastern Ave, historically streets like Worthington that we're working on now, water and sewer and gas had to finish all their work, so we coordinate up with them every year.
Councilor Gomez.
Mr. President, at this time, I would like to motion this back into committee. I just feel like a little bit more discussion needs to happen, and I don't want to take a risk on, what we have coming. But if councilors have a question or more questions, looking at the longevity of the rest of what we got going on tonight, I believe that this has to stay in committee.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Gomez, seconded by Councilor Walsh. Councilor Williams on
the motion. I would hope we'd vote this tonight, Mr. President. I think Chris can explain everything that needs to be explained. These are seasonal projects, and if they're not in the ground in a timely manner, you can end up blowing the whole shooting match. Now, I know in terms of, Chris, when you give the streets, you give the streets to the state? Or
Yes.
These have been given to the state?
Yes, they have, because we have not yet, because we have to accept the city has to accept the money. Once it's accepted, we then submit to the state that we're going to be spending 2.7, and then we give them the list of the streets.
Okay. And realizing the time factor that you're in, this is when you say you're under the gun, you're really under the gun with these.
Right. What we try to do is we try to get the bid out every year in April so that we can start work in the middle of May, beginning of June, get as much of it done as we can in a particular calendar year. The last few years, we've gotten it approved much later. I believe last year we were here in mid-May, and a couple years before we were here in August. So our program from last year has flipped over to this calendar year, and I'm really trying to avoid that, because when we tell people that a street is going to get done in 2017, I want to be able to get it done in 2017.
Well, that's the point, because if you go any further, any deeper into the cycle, and what tends to happen, contractors start to go, and it becomes very busy all over the state.
Correct.
And it's hard to get the contractors like you need, and if you tell a state you're going to do it in 2017, they hope that it's done in 2017. I know last year we started out kind of late, so I hope if it goes to committee, this is the middle of April. You start putting the bid out in May, it could be June and July.
Be starting work until the middle of July.
And you could not even get it done. I would hate the state to have to pull that money back.
The other thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to jeopardize salaries, because if we don't have the money in place, I have to lay off 4 employees.
But see, this is the point where the state tried to release the money early. So
Correct.
you could work early and get it done. It's always been the complaint. The state gave you the money later,
Correct.
which kind of like messed up your math and made it a zigzag puzzle. So they give you the money now, get out, and they want you to start working right away so you won't have any problems.
Correct. Thank you.
Councilor Gomez on the motion.
I'm prepared to support this item, but I just felt that maybe there was some questions and some people that weren't ready, and I didn't want to risk, like you said, this money in question and laying people off. The only reason why I put it into committee, because I felt that some folks weren't ready to accept this and push it forward. But if you guys have more questions, I don't mind rescinding my motion, and then we can have a conversation about it. We've been here for a while already, and we can talk about it now, and then from there we can make that decision. So, Mr. President, for now, I'd like to rescind my motion to committee.
Motion withdrawn. Mr. Clerk, can you clarify what it is that we're voting on tonight and with item number 20? Is this the acceptance of Chapter 90 funds, or is this the acceptance of the expenditure of the Chapter 90 funds?
This is authorizing the city to spend the funds.
Authorizing
It's
the
kind
city.
of two items. We're authorizing to accept it and authorization for spending it based upon the layout that we have shown.
And so, Mr. Clerk, just for clarification, a no vote would mean that the city would be rejecting the Chapter 90 funds, or just rejecting the proposed list?
Let me look at the actual language.
I know.
This would be a rejection of the expenditure of the funds.
So it would be rejecting the proposed list of projects?
Simply speaking, we'd be rejecting spending the $3 million.
The money.
I guess I still need a little bit of clarification. Would we be rejecting accepting the money from the state?
If I could get to what I think you're trying to get to. Theoretically, at some point in the future, DPW could come back and with a different proposal to spend the money. The money would still potentially be available depending on the time frames.
Thank you.
There is a list of streets in the order.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Rook.
Of the city, there's a $200 million deficit. If we don't accept the money and utilize it, I'm sure somebody in Boston will ask for additional money, and there'll be very little that we can do.
Yeah, he's right. What's going on with this?
So Councilor Gomez has withdrawn his motion for committee. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Councilor Allen.
Yeah, Chris, just two things. Everybody wants the money, but the concern is on the streets. And is there, what streets are selected and what input was there? How did you make the list of streets?
What we do is we physically, within the DPW engineering department, we inspect the streets in the city of Springfield. We rate them. There is a rating program that we use, and at the end of every year, we rate them worst to best. And we start at the bottom of the list and start working our way up. The money that we're accepting from the state can only be used on publicly accepted streets. No private ways, no private property, no sidewalk programs per se. So we're dealing with publicly accepted streets in the city. So with those, we rate them. We basically start at the bottom and say these are the worst 50 streets in the city. We start to put estimates together for those streets, work with the utility companies. So basically we're dealing with streets that are in the bottom 1 or 2% in the city.
And what is the first time that the city council sees the list of streets?
It's at this point. What we do in January is we put together a list of about $15 million of potential streets to send around to all the utility companies. And what the utility companies do is they tell the streets to stay away from, that they're going to be working on either on a short-term or a longer-term basis. So we then kind of put those back in reserve. And with the entire list that we put together, we say, okay, these are the list of streets that utility companies are comfortable with us working on, plus at the same time, they're the list of the worst streets in the city.
So what would happen if somebody here approached you and said, how about this street? Is there any ability to add
I get approached every day of the year on a street.
I haven't approached you.
Not yet.
Lately.
But basically what I would attempt to do is, I'm going to show you, I have 2,000 streets. 15% of them are horrible. That's 300 of them. I could interchange streets all the time, so we start to look at neighborhoods where we worked last year, where we didn't work the year before, where we need to spread the work out. So we try to hit all sections of the city, knowing that we could have one or two in a particular area for the next year. So it is, you can tell me that there's a street that's bad, and I'm going to tell you I agree with you 100%. And if I take that one off and put another one on, we're kind of, I hate to say we're moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, but it's kind of that equivalent.
Well, I think the issue isn't the decision-making at the end, it's the input. Is there a chance to have a formal chance where you solicit from us formally? What are so you're not fielding, different phone calls about throw this, throw that, send it around to us before this list comes out next year. It's too late to do it this year.
Not to be disrespectful, counsel, I'm not really interested in doing it by referendum because everybody thinks their street is bad until you look at some of the ones that we're working on. My street was in horrible condition. It was paved in 2006 before I started with the city. It's now in great condition. There are other ones that have not been touched in 60 or 70 years that are just in absolutely horrible condition.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting referendum. I'm suggesting input.
Well, and what I'm trying to get away from is that we could have, I get phone calls every day and letters that said, my street's bad, when is it going to get done? And we've come up with a methodology to select the streets that I am comfortable supporting and arguing, I guess is the best way to say it.
And that would be still the same process next year. But everybody here would have been approached, do you have a street, there are 2 or 3 streets, that's the nuance of a difference.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm suggesting. I'm going to vote for it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, how do we avoid this next year and give input to people in an even kind of a way? So that's the issue tonight. There's no issue about accepting $3 million. It's did I get listened to kind of thing.
Yep, and I have no problem with that. What I want to do is anybody who has a question about streets in their neighborhood, streets for their constituents, feel free to give me a call, and I'm happy to go through kind of the ranking process and how we do it. I'm happy to share that information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chris, I'm happy to see parts of Boston and Parker, as well as Harvey, on this list. But I just had a question in regards to what's on the agenda tonight, actually, in regards to the mobile food truck ordinance. I see Lyman Street on here, which
Yes.
is the proposed location. Does this interfere with that?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, it helps us.
Really?
Because
Okay.
one of the things that's being done by MGM on some of those streets, there's going to be some striping and some parking modifications. So what we wanted to do is not have them do that work and then we come in afterwards or way before it and do that. So we're taking all that into account when we get that work done.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes, Mr. President, I want to thank Councilor Williams for putting this in perspective. I certainly don't want the city to lose out on the funding, but, you know, I have to say again how disappointed I am in this street list, because there are streets that have been asked for, I have been told to my face that were going to be done that are not on this list. But there's also advice out there is don't make a decision when you're angry. And I am angry because I very much just am disappointed that certain streets aren't being done, that private ways aren't being done, things that I thought as chairman of maintenance and development had been discussed and had been taken into consideration. So I am angry and very disappointed. But on the other hand, I do not want to jeopardize the funding, but I wish, as Councilor Allen said, and I agree with you on this, Councilor Allen, we should have 2 votes tonight, one on the money and one on the streets, because I could vote yes for one and no for the other.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I've been lied to.
Seeing none. All those in favor of suspending Rule 19 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
That would be
Roll
like...
call, Mr. Clerk.
On authorizing the order to expend the Chapter 90 funds for FY18, Councilor Edwards.
Okay.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rook. Yes, Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Twiggs. Absent, Councilor Shea. Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst. Yes, Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ramos.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved.
Thank you,
Item number
Councilor.
21, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 21 is an order granting a utility easement to Eversource and Verizon for the new South End Community Center.
Name and address for the record, please.
Peter Garvey, 104 Favorite Lane, East Long Meadow. We're looking for an easement for the South End Community Center for Eversource to bring power in and Verizon to bring data in.
Any questions from the council?
Is this the...
Councilor Williams.
I'm going to pull a Ken Shea and... I want to get your attention. I just had the thing of the, and I think TJ was going to answer it. It's almost like overruns, and we had what the state pays for and what they don't pay for,
For the easement?
and the abatement, and just some things they don't cover within the bond. TJ knows what I'm trying
This
to
is
get.
for an easement for the South End Community Center for
Oh,
power.
I'm
and
sorry,
data.
I thought this was the other one. Stern Square, I think it was, isn't it? The windows.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none. All those in favor of suspending Rule 19 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call.
On granting the easement, Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rook. Yes, Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Twiggs. Absent, Councilor Shea. Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst. Yes, Councilor Bud Williams. Yes, Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Item number 23.
Item number 23 is an order authorizing a bond MSBA statement for interest for projects at Zanetti, Kiley, Lynch, and Kensington schools in the amount of $16,261,075.
Thank you, Mr. President. So what the order before you is to authorize a total of $16.2 million to fund window and doors project for Zanetti and Kiley, and then roof projects for Kensington and Lynch. The overall amount for the city's share would be $3.2 million, $3,252,215. The MSBA will pick up just over $13 million. And to address the question that Councilor Williams raised, typically for the accelerated repairs, 80/20, we're pretty close to coming in on 80/20 on the projects. In the off chance that we don't, whether it's higher or lower, we do a reconciliation when we close out the project when it's done. And if it happens to be higher, we'd have to come back to let the council know. But we've had a pretty good success rate in making sure that the projects come in under what we budget.
Does that come out of free cash at that point? TJ?
It depends. But there'll be if we needed to go above the $16,261,000 for unanticipated reasons, we'd come with a request from whatever the funding source may be, whether it's free cash, additional bonds, or some other payment method. We would ask the council for appropriate.
Thanks, TJ.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, all those in favor of suspending Rule 19 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On authorizing the bond, Councilor Edwards. Absent. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton. Yes. Councilor Hurst. Yes. Yes. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Item number 24, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 24 is an order authorizing the mayor to execute a quick claim deed for the sale of East Westminster Street.
Good evening, councilors. Bobby Demusis from the City of Springfield's Office of Housing. The order before you is under our abutter lot program to transfer 4 lots to the abutting properties, all unbuildable lots, long time vacant, off the tax rolls. One's in McKnight, one's in Six Corners, one's in the South End, and one's in Bay.
Mr. Clerk, can you take them together, or do they have to be voted on separately?
I was just going to make that request from the clerk.
Item number 25 is an order authorizing the mayor to execute a quick claim deed for Walnut Street. Item number 26 is an order authorizing the mayor to execute a quick claim deed for the sale of Adams Street, for the sale of a deed of property on Adams Street. Item number 27 is order authorizing the mayor to execute a quick claim deed for the sale of Mapledale Street. You can speak to all of the items.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I mean, it's our abutter program. The 3 of them are commercial properties. The homeowners are just going to expand their yard. One's kind of a landlocked home that she plans to put a driveway in so she can get to the back of the house. The other is a commercial property. It's abutted on all sides already by the existing business, and it's just going to be encompassed into the existing business.
Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, all those in favor of suspending Rule 19 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On authorizing the deed for item number 24, Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams. Absent. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient.
Item number 25.
Order is approved. Item number 25, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 25. Oh no, approving the order for item number 25. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton. Absent. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Item number 26, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the order listed as item number 26, Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez. Yes. Yes. Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea. Yes. Councilor Shea.
Kenny.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton. Yes. Yes. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes, Council Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient.
On approving the order attached to the agenda is item number 27. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Twiggs absent. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Bud Williams. Yes, Councilor Ramos.
Yes, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
Item number 28.
Item number 28 is an ordinance entitled the Parking Ban Penalty Increase. Sponsored by Councilor Fenton.
Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'll be brief on this. In the course of discussions in the various neighborhood councils, most particularly the East Springfield Neighborhood Council, there were a variety of concerns that were addressed, and I know that Councilor Gomez, Councilor Walsh, and others were kind enough to hold subcommittee meetings in this chamber regarding snow cleanup. In the course of one of those discussions in East Springfield, at the East Springfield Neighborhood Council building on Carew Street, it was brought to my attention that the penalty for violating the parking ban in the city of Springfield is currently $15. And that is not, in my opinion, an acceptable fee if we expect to secure reasonable compliance, especially when we've heard from the DPW director time and time again that he has to be out there towing vehicles. So it's my suggestion that we amend that fee from $15 to $100, and that is in the form of an ordinance before you this evening.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I certainly agree with the sentiment, in terms of those who are capable of actually moving their vehicles, which is predominantly all of the cars in Springfield. But there's certainly, I just want to be on the record for talking about those cars, and especially the downtown region, that have a very hard time finding parking spaces. And I just, while I will say that I support which Councilor Fenton was saying, I do have a concern about those who are going to be burdened even more so by the fact that they really don't have any parking spaces or the availability to do that in the first place. So I just think it's wise for the councilors to also keep that in mind.
Councilor Ash.
Just quickly, I went back and forth when Councilor Fenton brought this up last week or a couple of weeks ago in terms of the actual penalty. My initial reaction was, geez, that's kind of steep. $100 is a lot of money to a lot of people, including probably a lot of us. But I also see what happens when, after the storms, when cars aren't moved or cars aren't even attempted to move, that just sit there for weeks at a time. And just now, when the snow's melted, you start to see that there's actual cars underneath all that. So I've come to terms with that price, that $100. I think is going to, compel people to do something, move their cars out of the way, because it cripples streets. It cripples the ability for emergency vehicles to get up and down the street. It cripples the opportunity for neighbors to have a clear pathway to their homes and to their sidewalks, etc. So I agree. I don't think the price is out of bounds, and I think I would encourage this council to go along with it.
Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I kind of like this change because it gets the cars out of the street. Initially, a lot of these hard to park areas mainly are in my district. I still am going to emphasize and state that we need to find the resolution for where these cars need to be parked. I have stated that I would love to use open parking lots that are utilized by the city while during these parking bans, we have a moratorium where they can park these cars, and while the parking ban is over, then they can still get that same $100 ticket if they leave them in those parking lots. It's something that I think that we can work collectively together and find some resolution, but it is a lot of money for some folks that live on public assistance. Some of these folks that they need every single dollar they have. But the majority of these folks live in, the Worthington Street area, maybe the Armory Street area. Then you have some in the South End and Outing Park that live on subsidies that, $100 is going to be very difficult to come up with. But realistically, we need to get some of these cars out of the street some way, somehow. And I know that we do have a sort of a small system with, I think it was Springfield Parking Authority, that you can park at one of their facilities for like $7 or something like that. But realistically, we have big parking lots when there is a snowstorm, and if it's canceled, and I understand, I guess that's a situation with facilities because they're cleaning up at the same time to get ready for the school. But I think that if our streets aren't safe and our streets aren't shoveled efficiently, then what's going to happen is that these kids, even though that their sidewalks in school are going to be good, when they're waiting for their bus is going to be the challenge, and we're going to risk somebody getting hit. But I fully support this. I understand that $100 is a lot of money, but I think people would now understand the seriousness of get your cars out of the street when there's a parking ban.
Councilor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly appreciate the intentions of Councilor Fenton. $100 to me seems to be an awful lot. I think the majority of the people that would be targeted are people who rent and those who have to actually park their cars on the streets because they don't have any other alternatives. I think those who will not be affected by this are those who live in houses and have access to driveways. And so I think automatically you're probably targeting an impoverished or an even more impoverished group of people in the city of Springfield. And so not only are you targeting those individuals, but you're targeting them with a $100 fee, which makes it very difficult for them to pay. And so I'm not saying that it should be $15, but certainly $100 to me seems to be a bit excessive. And I also think we need to get some input from residents. I know Councilor Fenton said that he spoke to his Ward 2 neighborhood council, but it just seems to me that we should have maybe a series of meetings and kind of get some input from residents to see what they feel about it before we act as a body. Thank you.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes, following what Councilor Hurst had to say, I was going to ask you, Councilor Fenton, how you would feel about having a further discussion on this and coming back after after a committee meeting. But I thought there was more expense involved because we're talking about cars that stay on the street, correct? Okay, but if your car gets towed, that's pretty pricey too. So we could be talking of over $200 for somebody.
Councilor Fenton.
So to address a couple of points, to Councilor Hurst's concern, certainly we'd entertain alternative figures. $100 per offense is just my initial recommendation. Obviously, would also be willing to discuss it further in committee. I appreciate the concern regarding some of the more impoverished areas in the city and those being the same people that don't have access to off-street parking. Certainly, those would be the folks that are most susceptible to getting these types of tickets. They're the people whose cars are being towed currently. So I didn't envision this proposal to be a disciplinary sanction or something to increase the penalty that's already existing to get further compliance, although I can understand how folks might have that impression. The goal was really to get further compliance so that folks wouldn't have their cars towed, because getting a $15 ticket is not very likely to be taken seriously. And so in that environment, if you leave your car outside because you've got a $15 ticket and then you're towed, and then it costs you over $300 and you don't have your car physically, you can't go get it until you got to secure other transportation. Get a cab, or if Councilor Hurst is successful, get an Uber in his other endeavor to the tow yard to be able to get your vehicle back. It's a much bigger burden. And so what we were hearing from Chris and others is that $15 isn't really taken seriously. It was my hope that $100 would be taken more seriously. Obviously, there are other amounts that would also work. And if people aren't ready to act on it tonight, certainly I'd be willing to discuss it further in committee. But the intent is to help folks who don't have a ton of access to off-street parking to understand that it is a public safety concern and it is an interest in the quality of life for all the residents to see that those spaces are cleared and that plows can get adequate access so that we can get better cleanup in the future.
Councilor Williams.
And I like the discussion, and thanks, Councilor for thinking outside the box. We know 15 is too small, and I think 100 might be too large. But what I'm more concerned about is that once you get the $100 ticket, and that ticket isn't paid, then what happens, Chris? When you don't pay the $100 ticket?
And like any other ticket that doesn't end up getting paid, you'd have issues with being able to get your registration renewed, your license renewed, your tax liens on your vehicle, et cetera, et cetera.
This is a very poor city. I'd be very concerned about that. We need to raise the price.
The one thing that I would like to add is we are not talking about you can't park on the street. We just want you on the right side of the street or the left side of the street, depending upon what day it is and time of the day. But I know one of the items Councilor Williams stated, very rarely do we drive down a street with some plows and one side of the street is 100% full. There are openings, and really what we're just trying to do is get the people to the correct side of the street at the correct time of the day. And I know we talked about maybe modifying the language, which I'm for if we can come up with something better. But really what we're trying to do is, our big problem is people just look at a 15, and let me just go back for a second. We probably tow 20% of the cars that are ticketed, and when I say we, the city, the DPW doesn't. So there's a lot of tickets out there that people look at for $15 and kind of go, you know, and, you know, $100, it's like, okay, and if you get towed, obviously it's a big thing, but, and it is amazing of the cars that we tow, we tow some cars 3 or 4 times in a year, you know, and if those people don't get it, I don't know what to do. But really what we're trying to do is just get the people from the correct side, onto the correct side of the street. We are not banning on-street parking. We just want the rule to be followed.
In terms of other municipalities, same size as us?
Most of the municipalities down here do not allow on-street parking at all.
Hartford?
Well, Hartford's a different story. Hartford has the same sort of parking ban. They have hours. You know, you get into Chicopee has the same sort of thing. In certain areas, a majority of the city, you can't park on the street. Long Meadow, you cannot park on the street. East Long Meadow, you cannot park on the street at all. And that's not during snow. That's during 365 days a year. So, you know, we have a unique situation. I understand people need to park on the street.
There's a lot of renters here.
Yeah, well, the issue that we have too is that if people are parked on both sides and, you know, we're leaving piles of snow, 2 days later that pile of snow is a pile of ice, which can't be moved. You know, cars, I have pictures that I brought to the committee meeting that, you know, cars were there for 3 or 4 days. And, you know, once they're moved, that ice on a particular, you know, storm, I mean, it's a pile of ice at that point. We can't even move it without a loader. So really what we're just trying to do is get people to follow the parking ban.
Councilor Hurst.
I'd like to make a motion to send this to the committee for further discussion.
Motion made by Councilor Hurst. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Fenton. All those in favor of sending the matter to committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That matter will be referred to the General Government Committee, chaired by Councilor Hurst.
That's your ticket.
Wouldn't it be maintenance and development?
Item number 29, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 29 is the mobile food truck ordinance.
Good evening, councilors. About 8 months ago or so, I'm going to go back even farther. The city was trying to grapple with food trucks in the city of Springfield. We really do not have a good ordinance from an enforcement standpoint. Approximately 8 months ago, the Young Professionals Committee of the City Council initiated the process of trying to put together an ordinance, and over those last 8 months, we've probably had a dozen or so subcommittee meetings to the point that we have put together, with some of my input and a lot of assistance from Tashina Davis in the law department trying to put this ordinance together. There are basically 2 documents that we're dealing with. The decision was made as we went through the process that an ultimate permit for a food truck would be issued through the Department of Public Works. We have a occupancy and excavation manual, so entities that occupy the public way fall under our purview. So we said we already have a permit process in place. We'll run it through the DPW. So with myself, Tashina Davis, working with the police department, the subcommittee, the bid, we started to put together the ordinance that is in front of you. And there's basically two documents that are in front of you. There are modifications in a new ordinance that is before you. We've also put in a lot of the requirements within our occupancy manual that kind of have a little bit more detail in there of what we're trying to do. And I just wanted to go through a few of those items. We have added into our manual the actual process for getting a permit. Prior to getting a permit, you do have to go to the Fire Department, Health and Human Services Department, Park Department, Hawker and Peddler license, the Police Department, and the Parking Authority. Now, not every entity has to do all of those, but depending upon what type of vehicle and service that you're providing, you may need to. If you have propane, if you're serving certain types of food, size of the vehicle, type of the vehicle, things like that. Those processes are already in place, but now they're going to be brought together in one location under us. One of the items that I have in our manual is we are not allowing out-of-state vehicles. And the only reason I put that item in there is if an entity out of state doesn't comply with rules and regulations, we have no way to deal with them. Out-of-state vehicles, if they don't comply and we have a lien against them, there's nothing we can do. We can't go to another state and say you can't give them, you can't suspend their license. So we're trying to keep it within the state of Massachusetts. And that was an item that really wasn't discussed in a lot of detail. The vehicle has to be registered, obviously, and it has to be properly insured, and that comes along with the permit application. And what we've done is we've put the permit into 3-month increments, basically June through August, September through November, December through February, March through May. So an entity can sign up for any one of those quarters and work through the process. The hours of operation was a contentious item. Right now, the proposal is the hours of operation would be, somebody would be allowed to operate between 7 a.m. and 1 a.m. We've went back and forth about stopping it at midnight, going to 2 a.m., but right now the agreement with all the committees and the police department is a 1 a.m. Stop. The location for a food truck has to be in a city-approved parking space. So you just can't pull over to the side of the road. What the application process will be is when somebody comes in and gets approved for a location, the DPW will put up a sign that says mobile food truck vendor parking only. So that becomes their parking space for that period of time. In the downtown area, what we went back and forth with is we identified specific locations in downtown where we will allow food trucks. Right now is we've come to an agreement that 6 locations will be allowed at Riverfront Park. That's a little in flux right now because there's going to be some construction going on, but 6 of them will be allowed there, and 6 of them will be allowed in the Lyman Street, Kaner Street area. That kind of gets into the whole thing of Union Station, the work that we're doing in Duryea Way, and connection to the downtown area. Elsewhere in the city, anybody can make application for any location in the city that meets certain criteria. And right now, the only major criteria that we're looking for is you can't do it in a residentially zoned area or within 500 feet of a residentially zoned area. A lot of the complaints that we deal with the police department are about some of these vendors who, park on a location. So we will work with vendors trying to identify those locations. Existing vendors will have rights moving forward to a particular location. Utilities have to be self-contained. We have a lot of trucks out there that are plugging into adjoining businesses, whatever they find a location that there's an outlet somewhere and they plug into it. That's not going to be allowed. Vendor has to be responsible for trash. I can Virtually every Monday, we get a call from downtown areas that there's bags of trash thrown somewhere, and it's usually from a food truck vendor. They have to comply. They cannot put out chairs, tables, kiosks, things like that. They must comply with all temporary parking restrictions. So if we have parking bans or if there's construction, we'll work with them on finding alternate locations. Permit costs. Right now in the DPW, all permits start at $75 for the permit, and then there are extras on top of it. And what was discussed previous to a meeting that happened last week is that we were talking about $150 a quarter. So if you came in, you paid a $75 fee. If you kept moving forward every quarter, you paid $150. I believe in the ordinance in front of you, the number is different. I prefer the number that I have, 75 and 150, for the simple reason is that we issue occupancy permits throughout the city at all times. I want the number for this permit to be somewhat in line for somebody else who is occupying a parking space in another part of the city for some other need. Whether we're talking about scaffolding, dumpsters, etc., they are still occupying a parking space, and I don't want to have to talk to those people and say, wait a minute, why are you giving those people who are making money cheap, yet I'm trying to do something here and I got to pay more. So that was my thought process on that. I also have an item in there about fines, and the number that's shown on the ordinance is different. That I'm going to defer to the council here on how you want that number to be, because to tell you the truth, not that I don't care, a fine, both of them that we're proposing are pretty good fines if somebody's operating without a permit. In the manual itself, we also do obviously all of our excavation and occupancy permits in the city. Before you last year, we did some modifications of some fees, and we had some other language that we changed. And there's a few items that I put in there that are separate from food trucks that I just wanted to highlight real quick. We are getting a lot of requests from utility companies to issue separate permits for one location. So if somebody digs a hole, they're trying to tell us that, hey, we'll dig the hole, somebody will come behind us and fix it. And the answer is no. I want somebody to fix it right then and there, so I don't want to issue separate permits. Contractors right now are not completing work and then just coming back at a later point. I want to say you have to get another permit, so at least we're getting some additional money out of them. We issue yearly permits for entities that work within manholes, and I want that right now. All of a sudden somebody shows up in the street and they don't notify the DPW, and street's closed, and we have no idea why, who, or whatever. So we've put in some language on notification. On-site contractors, one of the problems that we run into is that they kind of talk to the police officers that are there and say, hey, could you close the road? It'll make our lives a lot easier. So we put in some specific language that the on-site detail officers really don't have that authority without going through a proper process to close a street. When we close a street, police, fire, ambulance, school all get notified, and the worst thing that can happen is that if we have Plumtree Road closed and nobody can get down it simply because it's easier for somebody to do excavation, we want that to work. We also added some additional language about the ADA and the AAB. AAB is the Architectural Access Board in the state of Massachusetts, to ensure that handicap ramps get constructed properly. And we just kind of fixed that language because some of the entities are out there tearing up sidewalks and handicap ramps and not constructing them properly, and then saying, well, I didn't see it in your rules and regs. So we're trying to highlight that language in there. Those are really simple and straightforward items. But with regard to the food truck ordinance, we spent a lot of time with the committee. The police at this point are very happy with the general rules and regulations that we have. I think that in general, the committee is very happy with that, and what we really are hoping to walk away with is something that is enforceable. So if somebody is not playing by the rules, the police can deal with it, and people who want to play by the rules will have a dedicated parking space someplace in the city that they can do proper business out of.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, Chris, I want to thank you for your due diligence on this as well. I know it's We really had close to 12 subcommittee meetings on this ordinance. And I also want to thank those who were involved in this process prior to me being on the council. I know Councilor Hurst, Councilor Fenton, and I'm sorry if I'm missing anyone else, that was a part of seeing this through. Where we stand today in the city of Springfield is there's no regulation for mobile food trucks. So I have spoke to vendors who have said to me, well, I consider my cost of operations by the tickets that I get. And I think that here in the city, we can certainly do better than that. I think that the rules laid out in the ordinance certainly are feasible for those who are truly looking to operate a mobile food truck operation. Now, I will say that there was a lot of legwork, and I also want to thank, Jay Latour, who is the former YP subcommittee chair. There was a lot of legwork involved in this process, making a lot of people happy, a lot of compromises took place, and I just kind of want to run down the list of those stakeholders who we involved in this process. The first being, as Chris mentioned, the Springfield Police Department. Prior to the compromise of the 1 a.m. time, it was set for 2 a.m. This 1 a.m. time would mean that the mobile food truck vendor would have to stop operation at that 1 o'clock time, and there will be 30 minutes, I believe, for cleanup. Next, I met with the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association on 2 separate occasions. The first meeting that I held with them, they gave me some feedback back in terms of what can be improved, and we certainly incorporated those changes into the ordinance. And on the second meeting, they gave us and voiced their support of the concept of this ordinance. I also met with vendors who are currently operating in the city of Springfield. There's 30 listed on the books, and I will certainly say that about 50% of the people who were listed showed up for that meeting. It was a very lively discussion. And they are also in agreement that 2 congregated food truck locations fare better for business because it draws people there. If you go to Detroit, if you go to Albany, if you go to Boston, Hartford, food trucks typically are in a congregate arena where there's a variety and assortment of food choices, and I think this is in that spirit, that same light. I also want to say that the Springfield bid was a major voice, a part of this process as well. We want to make sure that these food trucks don't hinder the current operations of some of the businesses, the brick and mortar restaurants downtown. And I think Mr. Russell could speak to the marketing plan or prospective marketing plan that is on the books.
Thank you, councilors. The ordinance as written today, the Business Improvement District is in full support of, and beyond just voicing our support, knowing that there's a designated area that we can have a variety of food trucks in one place. There's 2 things we can do. 1, we're going to put marketing dollars behind promotion of that. 2, we'll designate our crews to clean these areas on a daily basis first thing in the morning. So if for some reason some of the customers have left stuff behind, we'll have that picked up and taken care of before the business day, the next business day. The marketing dollars that we'll spend approximately this year, if it happens before July 1, will be about $15,000 in social media, digital, and radio advertising.
Thank you, Chris. And I will also mention, too, that we thought that because it's the first time in the city's history that food trucks would be regulated, that it was appropriate to include a sunset provision of this ordinance, meaning that if we find, or the council at the end of these 4 quarters feel that things are not operating correctly, or that there's other, input that, would negatively kind of speak on this ordinance as is, that the council could kill it or the council could amend it. So that allows this body to make changes to an ordinance that is fresh, that is new, and that is certainly in the spirit of the Young Professional Subcommittee. So Attorney Davis, also, I want to certainly give you a shout out for your due diligence, which in terms of drafting some of the amendments that you also have on record and that Chris alluded to. I will say, really, the point of discussion for this body outside of that is the permitting fees. As is in the occupancy manual, I believe it's around $670 per year. And right now, the Young Professional Subcommittee proposed to have it at instead $500 per year. So I mean, that just gives more flexibility to those who are looking to operate a mobile food truck. But I certainly, in keeping up with the essence of the occupancy manual, I can certainly understand why it's also important to keep it consistent. So I actually am okay with both options, and I will lay that on the table for the council to decide. Thank you.
Councilor Gomez.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all of you guys for putting this together in Ward 1. You guys are awesome. But moving forward on more business. Being there at some of these meetings, I've seen the work that was really happening behind closed doors. I want to commend my colleague, Councilor Marcus Williams, on making sure this thing went through and really reaching out to the mobile food trucks that are already out there. Because, most of these trucks realistically are in my district. They're down on Main Street, down in the North End. They're under the underpass. And now some of these individuals have a chance to be part of the culture and the revitalization of what's going on here in downtown. And just moving forward, I think that this is something that's going to be great. Union Station, once it's open, people are going to come out on Lyman Street. We're going to pave Lyman Street, we just seen. We're going to pave Kaner. That corner is going to be beautified. Then they're going to be able to walk from the food truck straight into Duryea Way. And then they're going to be welcomed into a corridor that we're going to have some restaurants coming in from that HUD grant, and then they're going to be welcomed by a beautiful new Stern Square. And then from there, they're going to be able to, it's bringing basically walkability back to the downtown district, which is something that they're trying to do with the TDI district, the Springfield Culture District. We're in partnership with a public safety meeting called E3. There's a lot of things going on here that a lot of people probably haven't grasped, and being just on the outside of it, and seeing the due diligence of YPS and the bid and making sure, and then you guys buying in when you guys didn't have to, that's definitely a plus for this. And my question always was, how does this reflect outside of this district? How does this affect other folks that the potato truck that's on St. George, or the people outside of our district? But I like how you guys put it all together and really made everybody a part of it. And I love the fact that, we're kind of creating little places where these trucks can go that is not affecting businesses that pay taxes, that pay that employ people, even though everybody has the same right to make money, to sell pinchos, to sell hot dogs, and this actually, what I asked Chris Ignoli was that how does this affect push carts, and if they want to, if I'm right, if they want to be inside of the district, they have to operate, even though they're a push or a pull cart, that they would be considered a food truck if they wanted one of these special areas that they're proposing, Riverfront Park, which I think is a big plus, and also on Lyman, which I'm really looking forward to moving forward to see what food trucks we're going to have down there. But I'm in full support of this. The only thing I have is if we could, the application fee, if that's what you're talking about, that says $200, if we can amend $279.56, Mr. President, from $200 to $150, to bring that down. Can I make that motion?
You can make a motion for an amendment.
The application fee is $75. I've proposed it to be $75.
Right. It says permit fee, so we have to amend A and B.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I was proposing $75 and $150 per quarter. The number that is listed
So
in the ordinance
so the
is-
permit for the year, let me just get this straight. Before I make the amendment, let me withdraw that amendment, sir. The amendment that we're talking about is that the permit fee for the year is $75.
That's an application, that's a permit application fee.
Okay, so where it says annual application fee on Section A in 27956 on the application fee, it says annual application fee should be $200 due upon submission for the initial application to DPW. After an initial application is submitted to renewal, application shall be required quarterly. So instead of it reading $200, you want it to read $75.
I had, and the only reason
Well, I'm asking, this is what you're proposing.
The only reason I say 75,
Okay.
all of our permits, applications are 75, and it just makes our life easier.
So then on
able
the
to process
so on the next part where it says permit fee, it should read the fee for the mobile food truck permit shall be an additional $150 required quarterly.
Correct.
Paid quarterly upon approval of the initial application or renewal application by DPW. So in total, we're looking at these food trucks would be paying $675 for the year.
Correct, and I think if you look at the number that Tashina has in there, I think it adds up to 575 or 600. Yeah, something like that. So
Say it again. What?
500.
Currently, you want it 500. YPS wants it at 500. All right, for a second. Let me backtrack for a second. I need to speak to this gentleman right here. Por favor, puede pasar. Yo sé quién es. I know who he is. ¿Cuánto en ticket tú pagas diario? And I asked him, how much does he pay per ticket per day? Because you said that they measure it by the tickets that they get. Tú coges ticket donde tú vendes los pinchos. Tú coges ticket ahí.
Me han dado ticket.
Te dan ticket. ¿A cuántos son?
Me han dado de 200, de 300, de 150, dependiendo.
Dependiendo.
Sí,
So what he has stated is that he's paid $200, $300, $400 for these tickets a day, right?
Yo estaba frente al correo.
Ajá.
Y ahí prácticamente me daban, yo llegué a pagar ticket de $500.
$500. So he has paid up to $500. So realistically, que estamos haciendo es que para no te dan esos tickets grandes, queremos que how do I say this? Que tú puedes pagar el 675 o el 5. Nosotros estamos hablando de eso ahora. So tú no vas a coger más tickets, pero te van a dar una locación ahí en el North End donde tú estás,
Sí.
para tú trabajar bien y tú no puedes, para los guardias o que los dan de tickets, eso se va a acabar.
Ajá.
Ok.
¿Cuánto uno va a pagar mensual?
Mensual, no es mensual. Es
anual,
cada los tres meses, 1.50.
¿Cuánto?
1.50.
Cada 3 meses.
Cada 3 meses. So, en un año tú vas a pagar 6.75 o 5.75.
No, es demasiado.
Pero tú me dijiste que los tickets que te están dando son
Counselor, if
5.
you can, Counselor Gomez, if you can translate for the rest
So
of
I'm going to get there. So the conversation that I'm having with him is he's telling me that the expense of $575 or even $675, which both are in question, is way too high for him. But what I'm trying to explain to him, he's gotten tickets for $200, $300, and $400. And I know that's not all the food trucks, but we're just using him as an example. And I'm trying to tell him that it benefits him to pay $575 or $675, whatever it is that we decide for this ordinance, so then he can stop receiving $500 tickets, $200 tickets in a year. He's going to end up paying thousands of dollars when he can comply and pay cheaper, and then he wouldn't have nothing to worry about. So that's why, because I know he had a language barrier, and I wanted to clarify that with you. Una pregunta que tú tienes bien rapidito. What's your name? Huh? I guess it happened already, but I wasn't at the committee, so I was actually asking. There's 3 steps? Okay. All right. So they just want you to say your name and your address. El nombre y... No, I'm just asking what she said. El nombre tuyo.
William 81 Rain Street.
¿A dónde?
William.
William y el apellido.
William Sánchez.
¿Y tu dirección?
En la Rain Street.
Okay.
81 de la Rain Street.
So that's it. Gracias.
Okay.
Chuck's in the North End. It's right in front of Noonan Citizen Council. That's all. So I just clarified my questions, and I had to ask, realistically what they're paying.
Councilor Fenton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to follow up on the point that was made regarding the fee structure, the proposal of the committee that was brought forward is for an annual application fee of $200 with a $75 quarterly fee. That totals $500. Mr. Signoli is recommending in his occupancy manual that we have a $75 annual fee, which is lower on the annual, but a $150 quarterly fee, which totals $675. So unless there's any motions to amend what's proposed in the ordinance, it would be a $500 fee payable in the form of $200 up front and $75 per quarter every 3 months. So unless there's any motions to change that, that's what the proposal is. With respect to some of the points that were brought up earlier, I also want to thank Chris Russell and the bid for taking a leadership role in this. There's a lot of people who put a lot of time and hours into this, but without the bid support and underwriting, none of this would have happened. So thank you, Chris, for your financial support. Thank you for humbly staying here with us late into the evening and for being willing to be in the background on this and really be the organization that propelled it to happen, but allowing other stakeholders to come in and share in this good thing for the city. I also want to thank Councilor Hurst and particularly to Sheena Davis and Councilor Marcus Williams for all the hours that they put into this. This was a long, long haul effort, and there were a variety of stakeholders that were brought in to make sure that we had buy-in. We're talking about the Springfield Police Department, Aqua, the Springfield YP Committee. There were meetings with the food truck vendors, with downtown restaurants, the bid, DPW, and Chris Signoli. Even Kevin Kennedy in the Economic Development Office was consulted. And because we have the Union Station project, yes, even Kevin said yes. And the Economic Development project of Union Station happening right around the corner, it was important to us to make sure that all those stakeholders were brought in. Health and Human Services with Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris. And I can't tell you how many times our back was against the wall and Councilor Williams and this committee refused to take no for an answer. When a roadblock was put in front of them, they said, I need to understand why that's there. Why can't we find a way to get around that? And it took a lot of time, but I'm really proud of the things that they were being able to achieve through that effort. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you to everybody else that put time and effort into this. And I'm hopeful that if we can sort out what this application fee structure looks like, we can move forward with a really successful project, which, by the way, is happening on the same evening that we're doing all of these fantastic improvements to Duray Way and Stern Square, which are going to be complemented nicely by this food truck row on Lyman Street.
Councilor Williams.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Councilor Fenton said. Thank the participants, the bid, young professionals, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Fenton who started this, Councilor Marcus Williams for taking the ball into the end zone. Great job, young man. But this not only clears up downtown, it gives us a footprint for the whole city. It's just not downtown. This affects every neighborhood in the city, from my understanding of what I read about it. So, first time in the city's history that there's been a food truck ordinance and a push cart ordinance for the entire city, not just downtown. So there's some folks who are very excited in different neighborhoods that they find will have a pathway and a footprint to keep this stuff legally. So congratulations and kudos out to all of you. And Attorney Davis, job well done. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Rook.
Just had a question, Chris, on the selection process.
Yep.
So there's 6 trucks on Lyman Street by Union Station.
Yep, Lyman and Caner.
And then 6 down at the riverfront.
Correct.
And how do who determines what food or flavor is selected?
Somebody's going to apply and they can pick a location, and as long as there's available space, we'll give them a permit for that location.
So we have 30 registered trucks, right? 30 vendors who showed up to a meeting, but I would suspect we probably have more than that.
Yeah, a lot of those vendors that are there, I don't want to say very few of them, but that list is kind of generated from people who get like one-time permits, that may operate on a weekend here, a weekend there. There's a festival, they have to get a permit. We're dealing with, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 people that operate on a daily basis throughout the city that we need to regulate. So if people come in anywhere in the city and they want to be at location X, as long as that location is available and they meet the criteria, they'll get a permit for that location.
And will part of the process be that they're current on their taxes, their revenue and things
Yeah,
like
we
that?
go through everything that has to do with taxes, liens. They have to be insured. They have to have all the proper certifications of other entities within the city as well. So as long as they're current, everything is fine.
And there's one other question, Chris. Why the 1 a.m. to 7 p.m., no selling food? I would think it'd be...
No, what we did is you can start at 7 a.m. and go all the way to 1 a.m. There are vendors in the city that just operate kind of in the morning to a little bit after lunch.
Yeah.
There's other ones that operate, say, from 11 to 5, and then there's others that come in at night. So we didn't want to just identify a particular location. We said you can operate at any location from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., and whatever hours that you have, you can operate at that time.
And why Riverfront Park? What am I missing down there? Is that future development or?
Well, Riverfront Park is a lot of people there during the day. There's also other events that happen there throughout the year that people come in for individual permits.
Yeah.
This way, with a lot of the foot traffic that is down there now, if there's food trucks, that's going to attract even more.
Gotcha. Okay.
Councilor Shea.
I just have one. These permits, once an individual has the food truck permit, is it transferable if they decide they want to stop and someone can take over their permit, or if
The
they want
only
to
way that
transfer
it's-
it to somebody else?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Davis. The only way it's transferable if it's a company that's purchased. But if an individual person has a permit, he can't give it to somebody else. That other person has to come in for the permit.
So if that individual wanted to cease having the food
He
truck,
stops
couldn't
and
sell
then-
that spot.
He can't sell it.
Transfer it to somebody else.
He can't. It's somebody new has to come in and make an application.
All right. And then was there a way? It sounded like you described a way where it was possible to.
Well, what we were looking at is that some of these people out there, as these things grow in certain areas of the country, they have a business and they own 3 or 4 or 5 trucks that they have around, and they might be a company. So that company may be bought by another company.
Okay. All right. Fine.
For example,
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. The ABC company could transfer it to the CBS company.
right, as long as they're purchased. But what we don't want is somebody selling it to somebody saying, hey, here's a good spot, pay me $50 and I'll give you my permit.
Right, okay,
So,
fine.
because we're going to issue, it'll be for that permit for that entity at that location.
So you've covered that issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have 2 amendments on the floor. The first being, we want to add to the amendment that quarterly fees will not be prorated. That's the first. And the second, in the ordinance as is, we have 60 days as listed as the processing duration of time that it would take. And I think Chris believes that this might be a little too long, and that 14
Correct.
days or 2 weeks would suffice for the processing time. So it's the first being that we want to add a note that quarterly fees will not be prorated, and the second being that instead of 60 days for processing, there's 14.
Motion made by Councilor Marcus Williams, seconded by Councilor Edwards. For the amendment, Councilor Rook on the motion.
Mr. President, if I could, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to this ordinance, and this would be for John Viducci, who's been the longest-serving food vendor in the city of Springfield. He's been in organization for 32 years, and I'd like to grandfather him in, or make the motion to grandfather him in to stay in the spot that he's currently in until December 1st.
We currently have a motion on the floor, so we'll have to vote on the motion first, and then.
I don't know if you want to bring all 3 up. Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor for 2 amendments from Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Any discussion on those motions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Councilor Hurst, did you have a question?
the amendment would be to allow John Verducci, who's been a food vendor in the city of Springfield for the last 32 years, to continue to work in his spot, which is between Aldolfo's and Fat Cat's. And I know that because I've ruined many of shirts and sweaters over the years with that yellow cheese. But John is going to be retiring December 1st. He just adopted his grandson, him and his wife, and he's asked for consideration of the council to do that. I'm making the motion. I think he's a good businessman and would ask for your consideration.
Motion made by Councilor Rook, seconded by Councilor Williams. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will say that because this is a provision, or this has a sunset clause, that the language, which if that's its support or the body supports that tonight, will be certainly withdrawn from the ordinance after this, I guess, the fourth quarter that this takes place. I just want that language extracted because certainly moving forward also, I don't believe that others should be grandfathered in, but because he has been there,
we did
it's a tough one for me. It's a tough one for me. I will say that I have met with Mr. Verducci on a few occasions, and he had first let me know that he would not be ending his operation for another 2 to 3 years. Now, prior on Facebook, I hate for that to be the way that I find this out, but he did mention that at the end of December he would be completed with being a vendor. Now, if he so chooses to continue past this December time, then hopefully what I just mentioned and that being extracted will take care of that. But in the essence of the YP subcommittee, I will say I don't support it. I don't support it because I believe that it counteracts with what we're trying to do. I think that you're giving preference to people that, yes, have been in the city for a long time, but there's also several other vendors who could receive some type of special consideration as well, and they're not written into that or being grandfathered in as well. So I do not support the amendment that Councilor Rook made.
Councilor Gomez on the motion.
Chris, grandfathering Mr. Verducci there, does that hinder the Duryea Way project that we just voted on today?
In a small way, yes. And just to go back from a subcommittee standpoint, this item was brought up a couple times within subcommittee, and it was basically voted down. If it were to be considered by the council, I would suggest that you don't do it unless the police are involved. The police department need to be part of that discussion. They were one of the entities that was vehemently against it. What they are attempting to do is clean up issues that are happening in the Stern Square area, and I know they were the entity that was very much against that. So I'd ask for your input, at least be able to get their input on it.
All right, and then if we were to put in this provision, because where he's actually parked is a no parking zone and a tollway zone.
Correct.
Can he be moved down to a parking spot for that small time frame in front of the club? Because realistically, when you stated, you know what, we can't do that because in the provisions here, he pulls electricity from across the way, which is part of this ordinance that he can't do that. So without that power from across, would that create some kind, so he wouldn't be cooperating with the ordinance that we're proposing now?
Correct. There's a couple issues there. The time issue, number one, he operates now until 2 in the morning, 2:30 to 3. So the ordinance would still come into play for 1 a.m. The issue of power is a little bit of a problem there as well. Trash from time to time becomes a big problem in that area. And the parking space situation. That area is designated as a loading zone and then goes into a paid parking at certain times. And so we would end up having to find a location. I could also guarantee that what's going to happen is, a lot of other vendors, when that was brought up in the meeting, when we said no, some other vendors are going to go, well, what about me? with that. So I would just ask that you kind of get some additional input before that is considered.
All right, no, I had those questions for you pertaining to the motion. It is a tough cookie. John is a dear friend of mine, but what's fair is fair. And I guess until we clarify which direction we can move, I don't have a decision for that yet. But I appreciate you bringing it up, Councilor Rook.
You going to talk on that? Well, I can just.
I would just state that it does present a slippery slope as far as other mobile food vendors go in the city of Springfield, and that it is opening up the ordinance to challenges before it even gets a chance to get on its feet. If I was a mobile food vendor, I would be upset about it. So I would just say it's a slippery slope for others. That's just my advice.
Councilor Ash.
Mr. President, as
There's still a motion on the floor made by Councilor Rook, seconded by Councilor Bud Williams. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Marcus Williams.
I will say lastly, and thank you, Councilor Ash, for that point, but I will also mention too that Mr. Viducci can still operate. He can be one of the spots on Lyman or Riverfront Park, and I'm quite sure it's feasible enough for him to do so. This just gives him additional avenue to continue his hours of, his operation. And essentially, Mr. Viducci, he does, I think, in my conversation with him, he does the best when the clubs let out. But this ordinance, as is, cuts off this time at 1 o'clock a.m. So the benefit to him is going to be very minimal, or if at all, if he is grandfathered into this ordinance. So that's just my 2 cents about that.
Anyone else on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion fails. Any other questions or comments? The motion failed. There were more no votes than yes votes. Councilor Fenton.
Well, as much as I don't agree with him, Councilor Rook is entitled to a roll call if he requests it. We can't deny him the roll call.
Councilor Ash. I'm sorry? Well, I will allow for a roll call. Mr. Clerk, roll call. Well, the roll call is for the amendment that was just proposed by Councilor Rook. Mr. Clerk.
On Councilor Rook's motion to amend the ordinance to allow John Verducci to keep his space between Adolfo's and Fat Cats until December 31st of 2017. A yes? December 1st, 2017. A yes vote is in favor of the amendment. A no vote is against the amendment. Councilor Edwards.
No.
No. Councilor Allen.
No.
No. Councilor Rook.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh. No. Councilor Marcus Williams.
No.
No. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Absent. Councilor Shea.
No.
No. Councilor Fenton.
No.
No. Councilor Hurst.
No.
No. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes. Councilor Ramos.
No, not sufficient. Motion fails. Councilor Ash, did you have a motion? There's a motion to send it back to committee from Councilor Ash. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Rook. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of sending the matter to committee?
No.
Question, Councilor Ramos?
All those, we're on the
Subcommittee
motion.
doesn't exist anymore, correct?
The subcommittee will be dissolved after the food truck ordinance. And so this motion is to send it back to the Young Professionals Committee for further discussion. All those in favor of sending it to committee say aye.
No.
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 Opposed?
No.
Motion fails. Is there any further discussion on the ordinance? Councilor Hurst.
Yes, thank you. And I'll try to be brief. I will be brief. I know. I want to start off by first of all thanking Councilor Fenton for having the foresight to form the Young Professionals Committee, which was the start of a variety of young people coming together and putting forth their ideas on how to make this city more vibrant. Jay is one of many who was there at the outset, and so I just want to, for everybody who's listening, certainly express my appreciation to the entire YP committee, as well as to Councilor Fenton, and then to Councilor Williams for taking the torch and really getting this to the finish line. It was not easy by any stretch, and the fact that you were able to get it to this point is a credit to your stick-to-itiveness. So, and the rest of the committee as well. Just a quick question, and I think this might be for Chris. If you have 6 spots, say on Lyman Street, and you get 15 applications or you get 10 applications, and I think you had hinted to this earlier, what guidelines are you going to use to determine which trucks are selected?
Whoever gets there first.
Whoever applies first.
Whoever applies first.
So whoever applies first can apply for wherever they want to be, whether it's on Lyman Street or the riverfront. And then the second question.
And just to expand upon that too, if we move forward and we realize that we're getting more applicants, then, excuse me, we can look at seeing if we need to make modifications to the ordinance to allow more locations.
And so is there any stipulations around the presentations of the food truck in terms of aesthetics?
Aesthetics, not particularly, but we do have rules and regulations about music, lighting, things like that, we don't want outside, we have some specifications in there that talk about, loudness of music and things like that, but the aesthetics of the truck, I'm sure we're going to get all sorts of wonderful architectural treatments.
And then the other question was around the variety.
Mhm.
It would seem to me that, on any given place, we would want a variety of diverse food trucks, and it seems to me that the first come, first serve may not lend itself to that, and I just was wondering if you guys had considered that.
Well, we came upon the number, and I say we, as part of the committee, came upon the number of 6 because that's what we kind of felt like the number was going to be in the central business district because we usually don't see more than 6 in the area. And as I said, if we need to expand it, I don't think that there's any really major problem.
Expand the number of
Expand
food
the number
trucks?
of them, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because if it becomes successful and it's working and everybody's happy with it and it's not an issue,
Okay.
Do we go to 8? Do we go to 10 and try to expand the area a little bit?
Okay. Well,
It's kind of the first number we felt like these are the people that kind of are in the area now. That's the number we're dealing with, the manageable number for enforcement, et cetera.
I guess the only other question that I had was around if somebody applies for the first quarter.
Yep.
And does that take up an entire, do they have to commit to the year, or if they just commit to the quarter, then that means that only somebody else, somebody else who comes in after that quarter would only have the remainder of the year left in that particular spot if they so chose?
The way we have it written is that if you have a permit, you have first rights to that location as you keep moving forward. If you give it up and somebody else comes in there, they now have the first rights. Because some of the vendors that we did talk to or that were discussed at the meeting, some of them only want to operate in the summer. Some want to operate in the spring, some want to operate just in the fall, some want to operate year-round. So that's why we move the quarterly numbers around, or the times around a little bit to accommodate as many people as possible.
So you guarantee that quarter every summer if you want it? Or every spring?
Not necessarily every quarter, but continued moving forward. For like if you stopped in May and you applied, you can keep that spot. Nobody can take that spot if you're going to keep staying there.
Okay, so essentially in order to reserve your spot, you have to stay there year long for the
that
duration.
becomes somebody's business decision.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Are there any amendments, motions? Councilor Gomez.
You said that it'd be like first come, first served. I was under the impression that it was a lottery.
No, there's never been a lottery.
First come, first served. Well, we're gonna have 6 hot dog carts out there. That don't make no sense. That's not fair. It should be a lottery. I'm just saying, me personally, me being the ward counselor, it should be a lottery. It doesn't. You don't have a pincho truck and then 5 hot dogs. It should be a lottery. The first time around should be a lottery. It makes it easier. You put out the RFP, they put it in, they get a number, and they pull the number, and it's a lottery. I think it's only fair.
The only place where we're restricting the number is in downtown.
No, I know. I completely understand.
Elsewhere, anybody can do anything that they
You're
want.
absolutely correct, but what I'm stating is because it's once the marketing comes in and all this is going to be a hot ticket that they're going to be coming for this spot. And what I think makes sense is that it's picked in a lottery. If you have more, let's say you did have only 6 that applied. Fine, you got the 6. But if you have 15, 20, 30, I'm exaggerating the number, but I'm just being realistic. If it's a number like that, I believe that it should be a lottery to make it fair.
Well, the other thing that, as I mentioned, that we would do is we would expand the number. We would say instead of 6, we'll do 8, or we'll do 10, or we'll do 12. If it becomes very successful,
because at the end of the day, they're still going to pay the same price as anybody else that's not going to be in the district. So realistically, they're going to still get their permit, but they just didn't get their shot at being in prime time, right there on Lyman. And what will end up happening is you can still sell your stuff, but you just didn't make the cut. You didn't make the lottery. Your number wasn't picked to become part of the situation. Some people won't elect to come downtown, but I'm just saying if you had more applicants, the moment of fairness is what I'm going with. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Councilor Gomez, I think first, I don't think there would be 6 applicants that would come through initially. Secondly, to Councilor Hurst's point earlier about the quality and how are we going to what that's going to allow if the worst case scenario happened and we had 6 hot dog vendors, well, people are going to choose whoever's serving the best product. The others are going to decide it's not. They're either going to improve their product or they're going to not be viable anymore in that area and will move to another part of the city. So I think the lottery would only confuse things, and I think initially we won't even have 6 applicants in totality for those spots on Lyman and Kaner.
And I just want to add, Councilor Gomez, again, for the record, my name's Juan Latorre, 122 Forest Hills Road. We looked at a number of different, ordinances across this area, Boston, Troy, Hartford, and we did see in cities that have had an ordinance on the book for several years, they had some of more detailed information in terms of tiered pricing structures or a different sort of, like you describe, a lottery system. We thought it was appropriate for this first attempt at a food truck ordinance for the city of Springfield to keep it a little more simple in its analysis and in its design, knowing that with the sunset ordinance, that as it became implemented, as food truck operators, began using it, and as, like you said, hopefully it gets hot, that if a problem develops, that at that point in time, the council can hold a subcommittee meeting, review the language of the ordinance, and address it as needed.
But personally, I would just state that you let something go on for a year. I'd rather deal with it now than deal with it when the sunset comes and it's going to get even worse, because then now you're going to tell somebody that started their business, invested in that place, and you're going to tell them, well, now we're going to change it and we're going to throw you in a lottery. Come on, that don't make sense. That's not business. It's not.
Councilor Fenton and then Councilor Edwards.
Okay, Mr. President, I agree with Councilor Gomez. So I'd like to propose an amendment by adding a subsection C under section 279-44. So there's an A and a B saying that there'll be 6 permits for Riverfront and 6 permits for Lyman. So I propose that we insert a C, and it'll just say simply, if there are more than 6 interested applicants for permits under A or B during any quarter, the Director of DPW shall conduct a lottery for purposes of determining the 7 permit holders.
Motion made by Councilor Fenton, seconded by Councilor Gomez. All those in favor of the amendment on the motion, Councilor Shea?
The problem, in all due respect to Councilor Fenton's item, is that this was going to be a first-come, first-served basis.
Correct.
And in order to conduct a lottery, we'd have to wait to see how many people applied. There'd have to be a window for application before you could have a lottery. And the first-come, first-served basis, if you're interested in doing this, you get your butt down there and you fill out the application. But otherwise, we got to wait, and supposing it's 7 or 8 months out and we've only got 4 people applied, we can't move forward. We've got to wait till we've got 7 people in order to play the lottery game. So I think we ought to go forward. We can always come back in here next year if we find that this is a real problem and deal with that issue of the lottery.
But if it's not in the...
On the motion, Councilor Edwards has the floor.
2 parts. One, in terms of diversity of food trucks, that's what the market is for. If you've got 6 food trucks, 6 hot dog vendors, and if the market, if you got everybody coming out, everybody wants hot dogs, then that's what it should be. The market will determine, as people congregate in this area, what they want to buy. And I don't think you're going to have somebody who's wanting, McDonald's usually builds near a Burger King, but still we have a preference, and I can't tell you how many years it's been since I've been to a Burger King, but I do the McDonald's thing. Same with the Taco Bell. We do develop our own diversity. And like he's saying about, the other point is in terms of a lottery, you do have to create a window, and we're complicating something that has been worked on for so long, trying to address every minutia of every potential ideal, when we really need to just vote on what these gentlemen have already put on a lot of effort to. Now, I've heard half the room give credit to all the people that have been involved and pour out all these accolades on how much work they've gone through trying to create something that's palatable for us to vote on. I don't think we have to kind of envision every potential part that might go wrong and then have a solution for it right now, because one of the most common sense things that's been proposed is that we can review it, that after we get it out there, we can see what the problems are and we can step back. And the fact that you want to create a lottery, I'm not trying to dismiss the ideal in its entirety, but you know, as long as I've been here, we've never had a businessman come before us and tell you, I don't pay my taxes, I'm not a good businessman, I'm not good in the community. They all stand in front of us at the podium and lie to us, and I wouldn't expect that the food truck vendors are going to be any different. But over time, so if you can't, the first thing out of the box is you don't have $75 to apply. So that's the first hurdle you have to come. So you put that's the first thing you do. The second one is that you can pay for the quarter. And then the third thing is that during the course of the quarter, you're going to fulfill all the obligations that are written out in the ordinance. And at the end of the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, when the time of the sunset approaches, this council or body will have the opportunity to review what needs to be tweaked. So I'm standing up and suggesting to my colleagues that we respect the process that has got us to this point. We pass it. Let's figure out what the problems are after we witness what the problems are. Are we anticipating trying to solve a problem that does not exist? And if it's great if you got 20 people that wants to put in those 6 spaces, but we haven't seen it yet. And if out of those 20 people, the first 6 in line should be able to start it. And then we can work things out from there. But let's have respect for all the effort and all this wasted accolades that you guys have poured out on these committee members and all the hard work they've done. Well, now we're chipping it away. So they've all thought about these different things, and if they hadn't thought about that one particular issue, to me it's not that important. It's important that we actually do something, because they've been waiting too long. Even Mr. Verducci's been waiting for how many years has he been complaining about how he's been treated down there, and he's on the verge of retiring, and we still haven't figured out how we're going to put something forward. So that's just my opinion.
Councilor Fenton on the motion.
Touche. I will withdraw my motion, Mr. President.
Councilor
As the
Gomez.
ward councilor, I will not support this.
Just off of that. And the story. It's not fair. It is not fair. I don't care what you're telling me. It is not fair. It needs to be, and I'm telling you right now, one thing I do know is people and I know food trucks. I live around them every single day in my neighborhood. You guys never grew up near one. What I'm trying to tell you is this. When you're coming down to the district, right, you're going to have 3 million people. The pool is 3 million people coming up to this train station. You're trying to develop this alleyway, and you don't think that's enough to tell the 20 people that are going to stand in line that say, oh, by the way, you, even though you've been here for 32 years and we just shat on you, that the first person in line is the first one that's going to get it. Negative. We already did it to Verducci. We're going to do it to more other people? Come on.
Councilor Williams and then Councilor Ash.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Which Chris?
Just ignore me, please. Yes. When a mobile food truck vendor takes interest in a particular parking spot, they will have the knowledge of who is around currently in existence, right?
Correct.
So therefore, if I'm a hot dog or whatever, and I see that there's 3 hot dog carts there, then I don't think I'm choosing that place. So therefore, it's to their discretion. I think that speaks to a selection more than anything.
I called on Councilor Ash next, and then Councilor Hurst.
Mr. President, I'll be brief. Although I have great respect for my colleague, Councilor Edwards, I respectfully disagree that I think that the items that we're discussing are substantive. They do mean something to how this is going to roll out eventually, which is why I said, let's further talk about this, because people have worked hard, really, really hard on this, and we might as well get it right. We've come a long way, and it's a really important issue. It's going to affect a lot of people, a lot of people's livelihoods. Let's talk about it a little bit more and get it right. And beyond that, I think we ought to give a little bit of respect to the ward council who's going to have to work with these folks all the time. I just think it requires a little bit more tweaking. Let's do it right.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Well,
it failed already once, but I don't know if we can do it. But I do think it requires a little bit more discussion. That's just my opinion.
Was that a motion?
Yes. Yes.
All right, motion to committee made by Councilor Ash. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Walsh. On the motion, Councilor Bell Williams.
I polled Marcus. I mean, they met with the hot dog vendors and carts from all over the city. I don't know how many people at that meeting.
16 vendors.
15, 16 vendors came here and had input into this process from all over the city. And I know that the Lyman Street thing that's your thing. I understand that. They have input. They've been going through this. You got a sunset provision in this. You got to roll this out at some point in time. And if you're going to do a lottery, you do. If you're not going to do a lottery, you don't. But I'm going to tell you, I had complaints about the process, and I expressed myself. But I'm going to go along with the process just so it can play out, so we can put something in place. If you want to put it back in committee, further study it.
Just to respond, Council, I'm not trying to hold this up. Trust me, I want this thing to go as quickly as anyone else does. It just seems to me that it's come such a long way. It's almost there. Why not, do that final tweaking, get it really right that everybody can be comfortable and happy with. That's all.
Councilor Hurst?
I just think that if we're going to move forward with this, then I think the general public and business owners are people who might potentially want to get in the food cart business. And I think once you sell it to them, I think there are going to be a lot more people than are anticipated. And I think especially considering all of the development that is happening in this city, I mean, I would want to get a food truck. And I would want to be one of the first to the table. So if we do move forward with this today, it would seem to me that we would have a start date that we would make the general public a start date in terms of when people can come and file applications. We do some advertising in advance, and then we make sure we advertise to all communities, as opposed to just identifying the carts that are in existence now. There are going to be a lot more. And a lot more are going to come once they see the opportunity, because I know it's a great idea, and I'm not the most savviest businessman out.
There's a motion on the floor to committee. On the motion, Councilor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. President. After all the work and all the accolades and stuff, we're still at a bit of an impasse. The ward councilor isn't happy with it. Why don't we just put it in committee and resolve these last 3 or 4 things, rather than leave all that work and kind of bad feelings when we leave here? Well, we just resolve. We got 90% of it. Let's get the last few percent. I support Councilor Ash's move to committee so we can get back on one page on it and feel good when we leave here tonight and get it resolved at a committee meeting.
Mr. President.
Councilor Edwards.
I will support it going to committee. But I just want to have one clarity. You can't claim all the food trucks, because the one at Liberty Street, the owner of the one at Liberty Street, they Save-A-Lot in the Taco Bell, he lives in my neighborhood, okay? And he lives in my neighborhood, and every morning he drives his truck over there. The food, I'm just saying, when you claim if something, it's all my city, and I'm older than you are, so your neighborhood used to be my neighborhood before you were born. And so I'm just saying that also when you go to the food zone, there's nothing personal. I'm just saying but not all the food trucks are. You're saying
Edwards has
the suggestion was that all the food trucks are in your neighborhood. I'm just suggesting to you that one of them is in my neighborhood. The food zone, there's a food truck at the food zone, which is also in my neighborhood. And I remember last year, that there was a gentleman that after the C3 officers in the south end that did not extend down by the casino, but in Ward 3, who was in violation of operating, and he was put down or stopped, or there was some issues around him. So not all of the food trucks exactly live in that one area. I am in support of getting it right. I will support it going to committee. I don't mean to offend anybody. I just thought that I thought there was a lot of effort had put in, and I know this has been a long going thing, and I thought it was something that I had read before I got here, thought it was done well, thought it was something that we could get past tonight, and I didn't anticipate that it would be, something, the lottery or the variety of interest of who might want to do it would be an issue that would stop it. But I'm not opposed for it to go on to committee, and I apologize if I offended anybody. It wasn't meant to be personal. I have every intention of supporting whenever it gets there.
Councilor Gomez.
My whole point is this. There's a person there translating to another person. This is not, food trucks aren't realistically all English speaking. All right, there's challenges. I apologize to my colleague, Melvin Edwards. The point that I'm making is that the diversity behind this particular ordinance, and I'm behind it 1,000%, but I need it to be fair. I represent a neighborhood or a ward that is diverse. It's not just Spanish speaking or Russian or Jamaican. Come on, this is something that people are going to have a language barrier with that don't completely understand it. And that's all I was asking for. Even if they don't understand it, make it fair to our people, our residents that live here. And that's why I propose just a lottery. I'm not saying that this is fabulous, this is fantastic, this is something that is necessary. But when I propose a lottery, it's because I want it to be fair. And that's it. Thank you. And I apologize to everybody.
All right, we still have a motion on the floor to committee. Councilor Shea on the motion.
Was that discussed in your committees when you were studying this issue?
I'll speak for the committee. It was touched upon briefly. The original point about the lottery that was brought up was we were asked a bit about how we were going to offer diversity. And we're talking the downtown now because throughout the broader city, you can have one anywhere. It's limited to 6. A lottery will pretty much assure you there won't be variety. The first come, first served basis, I think, would work just fine. But if it, again, a lottery then becomes a lottery. You could pick, if there's 25 applicants, you could pick 5 hot dog vendors out of the 25 applicants. So it's a lottery. It's up.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's going to be discussed in the committee. If the issue is lottery and it's been discussed and the people working on this have rejected that as a practical matter, why are we going back to committee to discuss something? It's going to be discussed, it's going to come back out here, and we're going to have the same vote we're going to have tonight.
Councilor Walsh on the motion.
Well, I'm going to support the motion. I'd just like to say for the record that I like hot dogs. I can't imagine that there's 6 different ways to make them. Maybe there are. We'll have a big debate about what's the best hot dogs in larger cities. But, I don't know.
All right. Motion made by Councilor Ash, seconded by Councilor Walsh to send the matter back to the Young Professional Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it. Right. Item number 30, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 30 is attached, or at least a part of item number 29. It's the Engineering Division's manual for the food trucks.
Item number 30, as the clerk explained, is attached to item number 29. Councilor Walsh. Motion made by Councilor Walsh, seconded by Councilor Gomez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Last item of the evening, Mr. Clerk.
The last item of the evening is a application for a zone change for the property known as 1535 Bay Street. This item is on for first reading and referral to the Planning Commission. This is just being read to the council, so the council's aware of it, and the vote is to refer it to the planning board for the first step.
All right.
The planning board has to issue a report for this body to act on the zone change. Correct. Correct.
All right. All those in favor of first step say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there any further business before the council?
I have no further business before the council.
Seeing none, will remain adjourned until April 24th. Have a good night.